What is it about slasher movies that makes them such a thrilling experience to watch? Is it the weapon-wielding maniac with a cause? The reluctant escape of a scream queen final girl? Maybe it's the nail-biting narrative with tension you could slice through like butter. Or perhaps you're just a sucker for gore and creative kills. Whatever the case may be, even just nailing one of these elements can solidify your film's place in horror cinema history. If the 70s established the genre, the 80s and 90s pioneered it with plenty of new murder mascots and the franchises that followed. But after decades of the same monotonous formula, when is enough enough? However, through the fire and flames emerged two popular subgenres, the horror comedy
Groovy.
And the holiday horror film.
You tell what we did.
Now combine those two subgenres and you get films like Leprechaun, Scream, Happy Death Day, the Terrifier films, or the subject of today's video, Hard Eyes. Hi and welcome to Studio Cinema Saturday, the show where we review films old and new, the ones that you don't like and the ones that you do. I'm your host, Dalton Sherrill, and today we're going to be talking about Hard Eyes, directed by Josh Ruben. And here we are again, the second week in a row on SCS, discussing a violent romance plot. If I had a nickel for every time that's happened at this point, I'd have at least 3 nickels. Now, let's set the record straight. Was I hyped up to go see this movie? Not really, no. There are a fair amount of slasher films I enjoy, but most of them have a serious tone or significantly less comedy. And if I do happen upon a horror comedy, there usually isn't a 50-50 split between the two genres. I feel like Hard Eyes isn't heavy-handed toward horror or comedy, and really does try to ride that line between the two. But a more astute description of the film is that it's also a screwball romance at the same time, and I think that's honestly one of the film's strengths. So, in a spoiler-free manner, did I like this movie? Yes and no. I thought it was a decent popcorn theater watch, and I think it's entirely okay to have those movies. And there obviously exists that camp of people that would throw most slashers into that category, but I am not one of those people. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. The Hard Eyes killer himself is probably one of the lamest slasher villains I've seen in a hot minute. Starting with the appearance alone, there isn't much that separates him from being a Jason clone, besides his signature mask, which is much more of a promotional gimmick than it is a scary element of his costume or a distinct aspect of the character. There's one moment where it's revealed the Hard Eyes mask has thermal vision, but that's literally the coolest thing about this character, besides his use of a crossbow. Even then, the crossbow and throwing knives get sidelined for other more common murder weapons, like axes and machetes. Also, genuinely, I think the creativity of the kills peaks in the first 15 minutes of the movie, which isn't a great critique for this sort of film. Moving away from the slasher elements, I did enjoy the two main characters, Allie and Jay, played by Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding respectively. Allie is an advertising agent at a jewelry company that's been forced to completely scrap her campaign about iconic tragic lovers due to the murderous Hard Eyes killer that targets couples on Valentine's Day. However, there's this guy named Jay that takes a liking to Allie after discovering they had the exact same weirdly specific coffee order. And later that day, Jay is introduced at the jewelry company as this highly successful designer. So he gets assigned to help Olivia with her campaign while he's simultaneously trying to win her over. The romance plot's really not that bad. It's one of those will they, won't they situations, but the joke is that despite being targeted by the Hard Eyes killer, he simply mistakes them for a couple even though they aren't one. So I really did like that aspect. But if I'm being honest, I really didn't care for any other component of the narrative. Everything outside of the comedy between our two leads feels campy and misplaced against the backdrop of gory kills, and even the humor between them could be hit or miss at times. The only exception to this being Olivia's quirky homegirl sidekick Monica, played by Gigi Zumbato. In regards to the technical aspects, I think it's a pretty good film with good compositions, but that doesn't get you very far with a muddled tone that fails to be scary and at other times fails to make you laugh. And this is only aided by a script that's littered with a mix of cringy modern lingo and bold edgy lines designed to produce shock value. This in addition to the lack of innovation and development that went into their villain, it's hard to call this a great film, let alone a good one. To me, it felt like a romance story cut with an uninspired Scream plot. So when you see the credit in the trailer that says from the producers of Scream, everything starts to make a whole lot more sense. I would really only recommend this film to couples that are looking for a fun movie this Valentine's Day season, but even then you could probably find something better to do or even perhaps a better film to watch. I'm now going to discuss spoilers for Hard Eyes, so if you don't want to know probably some of the coolest and worst elements of the film,
Get the f out of here.
go watch the movie. Or don't, no one's forcing you to. Let's go ahead and start with that opening scene. What better a way to open a Valentine's Day horror film but with a proposal that gets interrupted by a killer? You had the kill through the camera with the wedding photographer, him sniping the dude proposing, and then finally the death of the woman at the distillery. And that's the one that really makes you uncomfortable as the door shuts and the walls start closing in around her. Plus, there's the sheer brutality of seeing her head explode along with the eyes popping out. This was honestly a really strong start for the movie, but it's all downhill from there when it comes to the horror aspect of the film. Now, as far as our inciting incident goes, as Jay's leaving the restaurant after his failed attempt at rizzing Allie over a Valentine's Day dinner, Allie's ex-boyfriend pulls up with a date, which prompts her to kiss Jay and act as if they're a couple. This is what forces the plot into motion as the Hard Eyes killer sees the kiss from afar, deeming the two of them lovers and setting them in his sights. One thing I love about this is Allie's decision to lie about her relationship with Jay and spare her ego in front of her ex. This ultimately gets her marked for death, emphasizing the consequences of dishonesty. Another aspect of Allie and Jay's relationship I enjoy is how it's very much this two-person effort to survive every time they encounter the killer. Jay's not our traditional male lead, as he's not overly macho or really even capable of defending himself. As he states at one point during the movie, "These muscles aren't for fighting, they're for cuddling." Roll the montage.
So let's go there. Let's make our escape.
On the other hand, Allie is an independent woman that went through medical school and is now making a career for herself in advertising. They're honestly a solid match in regard to their personalities, shared career path, and things like their love for His Girl Friday, the movie that plays during the drive-in scene. Now there's a film you and your lover could watch on Valentine's Day. It's a fun little reference, and speaking of the drive-in scene, this might be one of my favorites in the film due to the tension created by the Hard Eyes killer sneaking around and searching cars. Their initial encounter wasn't bad, but closet jump scares are kinda lame at this point. The police station had some enthralling moments like the kill with the American flag and the sequence in which Jay's chained up in the interrogation room, but that's about it. However, I do think it's funny when Allie uses the cop's gun to break the one-way mirror and then proceeds to miss every single shot afterwards. It's like there are some moments where I feel like the horror and comedy moments do work well together. I also think it's kinda sorta working in that final scene where it's revealed the Hard Eyes killer was actually just a cop and an IT guy. You know, it sounds really lame when you say it like that, because it is. And there was also a third guy named Eli that they brought on simply because he was a fanboy, and he's the one Allie and Jay kill at the drive-in. Additionally, the antagonist's kink for killing motivation isn't cool or even that funny in an ironic sense. The cop really wasn't that interesting of a character, as all she really did was flirt with everyone she was in a scene with, and the IT guy's literally only in one other scene in which he asks Allie out on a date, to which she declines due to everything that's happened thus far. And maybe that was the point, to depict the Hard Eyes killer as this powerful force of nature type murderer, only to have him revealed to be these losers. It's definitely a joke, but not a good one. The only thing I really enjoyed about the final showdown is the choice they give Allie, which is to either end her own life and save Jay, or kill Jay to save herself. But even then, this tension's undercut by how lame the antagonists are and how easily they're defeated. Moving on to the film's conclusion, after some much needed reflection on the movie, I think I've come around on the ending. This non-traditional relationship dynamic between our two leads is fulfilled a year after the events of the film. Allie and Jay are at the drive-in watching His Girl Friday to commemorate their anniversary. While Jay proposes to Allie with a key to move in, she counters his proposal by asking him to marry her with a ring, and this was certainly an interesting subversion. It totally juxtaposes the forced, sorta artificial proposal at the beginning of the film. Instead of having Jay propose again because she didn't like the manner he went about it, she instead counter-proposes. The ending further mirrors the opening scene as Monica is revealed to be behind them with a camera, capturing the moment. However, their phone call ends abruptly like in the first scene of the film, perhaps signaling that the couple might not get a happy ending after all and suffer a tragic fate like the famous couples from Allie's ad campaign. I'm usually not a fan of this cop-out sort of the threat still lingers ending when it comes to horror films.
Jesse, it's okay. It's all over.
I think in some instances, depending on how final the death of the antagonist felt, this option is a fine route to take. But for it to be effective, it's gotta generate some shock value, which it honestly doesn't in this scenario. The artificially manipulated deep voice of the Hard Eyes killer wasn't scary during the film, and surprise, surprise, it has little to no effect at the end of the film either. Now it feels like I have nothing left to do besides score the film, and I think I'm going with a solid 6 out of 10. And if anything, I think that's a generous score. And the only reason I'm even going that high is my appreciation for Allie and Jay's romance plot and the chemistry between their characters. The comedy, slapstick, ironic, situational, or otherwise, was hit or miss, and at no point past the 15-minute mark was the film ever really that scary. It was definitely more heavy-handed with the comedy, and that's fine. However, I definitely think they could have gotten a little more creative with the killer's design, his shtick, and the manner in which he killed people. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Studio Cinema Saturday. If you did, be sure to subscribe, drop a like on this video, and let us know your thoughts about Hard Eyes in the comments section down below. We also thought it would be worth mentioning that we have plenty more episodes of Studio Cinema Saturday and its sister show Television Tuesday available for you to watch, as well as the first 2 episodes of our new show, Buying a Film Its First Drink. The premise being, when a film turns 21, we buy it a drink and we tell you what we think. But when we aren't reviewing movies and TV, we're the writers, directors, and editors of our very own original short films that are here to view on this very YouTube channel as well. And as always, we'll see you at the next watch.